Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have everyone here today for this very important session. We'd like to start off, if we might, with the reading of a special letter from the Vice Rector of RANEPA and Dean of IBS, my wonderful colleague and friend and AACSB board member, Sergei Miasadov.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, esteemed ladies
Dear ladies and gentlemen, esteemed ladies and gentlemen,
мне очень приятно to read the greeting of scientific advisor of IBS RANEPA, Dr. Itzhak Calderon-Adizes. Мне очень приятно огласить приветствие нашей секции научного консультанта ИБДА РАНХИКС доктора Ицхака Calderona-Adizesa. Dear friends, for more than a decade, I am proud to be the scientific advisor of the leading Russian business school IBS RANEPA, and I am glad that this business school decided to discuss at Gaidar Forum, one of the most famous and prestigious conference of Russia dedicated to the social, economic, educational, and cultural programs of Russia and the world, the issue of gender diversity, the issue of men and women roles in the workplace. It is the topic which recently attracts attention of the best scientists and managers in the world. It is especially significant that IBS RANEPA prepared the plenary session together with the world top and the most prestigious accreditation association in business education, Association to Advance the Collegiate Schools of Business, ASASB International. I am sure that in-depth discussion of the diversity would be interesting, exciting, and important. I advise the guests and participants of the forum to pay attention to it, and I want to convey my best greetings to all the outstanding business persons from Russia and abroad who participate in this session. Dr. Itzhak Calderon-Adizes, founder of Adizes Methodology, scientific advisor of IBS RANEPA and its executive MBA program.
Thank you, sir.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Спасибо большое.
thank you very much.
Start with a brief video.
This. Look at this. Do you like a dolly? Should we go for the dolly? There's a good girl. You're a good little girl, aren't you, Sophie? Look, what does this say? Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ooh, look at this, Sophie. Meow, meow. I think she liked that pink dolly the best.
If I were to tell you actually that Sophie is Edward, does that change anything?
I maybe thought, oh, this is a little girl, so I have to give her little girl things.
Solo. Solo. Hello. Hello. Come on.
What's this one? Oh, what's that one do? Is that a robot? What about this? Oh, you like that one? What does this one do? Oliver, Oliver.
You've gone for, you could say, boy toys for this boy.
Possibly in my subconscious, but for me, I was just going for what was around me, but then perhaps my subconscious was automatically playing a trick on me that I was...
If I tell you that he is actually a girl.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I suppose it's because of the stereotype.
And then that changed your behaviour towards the child.
It did.
And your behaviour was quite directive.
1, 2, 3. Ah. Beep, 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 beep. Do you want to see my robot?
She's picked up the robot, the car, the puzzle game. And I think she's been much more physical in handling the child than the other adults have been with girls.
That really astounded me because I thought that I was somebody that had a really open mind.
The surprise, so I automatically went for the pink fluffy toy because I said it was a girl, so I was sort of stereotyping.
I've always thought I was rather more open-minded than that, and I would think, you know, these are children's toys, whatever the gender.
It will make me think the next time I'm with a child, so my niece or my nephew, to make sure that I am actually being sort of fair and equal with all of them, and just giving each child an opportunity to just be whoever they are.
That's great, thank you. So, to me, it's fascinating if we were to ask around the room, those who are parents or who interact with children, could this ever happen to you? Could you be affected by stereotypes? I think most of us would say maybe, or yes, definitely. You know, we live in a world of stereotypes. This drives our behavior. We force these stereotypes, which we carry into business, and oftentimes into our business interactions, in our business experience. Likewise, as Sergey says so often, in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, this is even more difficult and more challenging. Well, we're very fortunate today to have an extraordinary panel of academics and business executives, and I'm very fortunate to come along for the ride. But let me begin by introducing my co-moderator, if I might, Marina Pochanak. Immediately to my left is a human resources strategy expert, an exceptional trainer and deliverer of professional development programs, 7 years with the International Olympic Committee, responsible for human resources with the International Olympic Committee and the Sochi Games, and now is getting ready to leave for Korea, where she's an advisor to the Winter Games in Korea. It's been a great pleasure for me to get to know a little bit about Marina, who also, I might add, not stereotypically, has a PhD in mathematics as well, and so comes from into this topic with a very deep orientation in mathematics and the sciences. So Marina, thank you for your time very, very much.
Thank you, Tim, and it's my pleasure to introduce my co-moderator, Tim. And Tim has been in the business education for almost, Tim, 40 years, if I'm not mistaken, and have been had a great international experience in almost all continents all over the world, and at the moment Tim is vice president of AACSB organization. This is a unique organization with more than 100 years of experience, combining 1,600 business schools, and Tim is responsible for the large EMEA region. And to add, Tim has 4 kids from the age of 28 till 32, sorry, one by one, can't imagine. Yeah, and not grandfather yet. Yes.
And I forgot to add, you have 3 children as well. So thank you very much, Marina. To Marina's left is our colleague, Katerina Alexandrova, who is, business development? No? Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Katya, who is Business Development and Commercial Director for Coca-Cola here in Russia. 21 years experience with Coca-Cola, and perhaps as impressively, in those 21 years, 13 different positions, from sales to strategy and many, many things in between. Katya also serves on the National Women's Leadership Council and has extensive operating experience, not just here, but Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, and the Baltic. So thank you so much for joining us.
And then it's a pleasure for me to introduce Irina Kibina. Irina actually came to the business from the government. She was vice mayor of Nizhny Novgorod. Can you imagine this, managing the big territory? And has more than 20 years of business experience in different companies like Sannenton Brew, Evraz, Sberbank, Team KBP, in the investor relations in communication world. And now Irina is a founder and shareholder in a big project of business mentoring, being not only the start-upper, but also a mentor by herself for top leaders and top managers, both male and women. Irina is a happy mother and a happy granny.
Nice. And to Irina's left is my colleague, Alsu Akhmachina. Alsu is director of the Graduate School of Business at Kazan Federal University. So another incredibly successful woman dean of one of the great federal universities here in Russia. Alsu has had a very interesting and diverse career, really starting with her love for and talent with French, where she was an extraordinary translator and worked with the French embassy and has migrated now into a senior leadership role in Kazan, and I've had the pleasure to visit with Alsu and her faculty, and it's a most impressive operation.
Impressive business experience in the Renault company, not only being the women leader, but also the top executive on the one of a subsidiary of Renault company in Russia. And Irina has an interesting, typically women situation in her life, traveling here and there and between countries while her husband has been working in another country. And then after 3 years, she relocated, joined her husband, and now develop the different project of Ron Hicks in France.
Super. And then it's an equally wonderful pleasure for me to introduce a legend in the business school world globally, my colleague and friend, the president and founder of Siman, Danica Perk, from one of the most spectacular communities on the planet in Bled, Slovenia, where she also leads the faculty at IEDC in Bled. Danica is really one of the great business school and business thought leaders worldwide. Offers not only extraordinary degree programs, but also executive education to companies around the world, and is a tour de force in the business school and business world community. And Danica, thank you so much for joining us today. We have I think, some extraordinary presentations by our panelists. We will move through those, leading to an open discussion here, and then optimistically, we will still be finished at 2:30, because this is a busy conference. So, should I go?
Yeah. So we talk about stereotypes and things which we live in, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. There are so many experiments and cases which shows how women and male are hiring, promoted, and take the leadership roles. And we have a case, Irina Zguralskaya, who actually is opposite the stereotype. Yeah, so she was a general director of the company, and she will tell her story. How was it? Fantastic. What was the experience of taking the top leadership position in a very male business?
So I prepared a short presentation.
Super.
Where I will speak about first, generally about what is gender diversity and why do we speak about it. What is the situation about gender diversity in Russia and in the world. And in the end, I will finish about my personal experience within Renault Group and the bank of Renault Group. So next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. So first, I think interesting question. Why generally we speak about gender diversity? Do we speak because of ethics questions? Or we speak because we want to make pleasure to ladies? No. This question is very popular already in Europe, and I'm very happy that now this question is under discussion also in Russia. There was a very interesting study that has been done by McKinsey already in 2007. What was the subject of the study? The subject was to analyze financial performance and organizational performance of companies who had women in their executive boards. And what was the conclusion of the study? The conclusion was that in the companies who had women in their board, the financial performance was much higher than in the companies who didn't have them. For example, if we take average return on equity that was analyzed within 300 main world companies, average return on equity was 47% higher in the companies with women participation in the board, and the average EBIT margin has been 55% higher. If we speak about organization, also different criteria of organization have been compared, and they arrived to the main conclusion that, for example, such points as leadership team, such points as work environment, such points as general direction of the company, the performance on this criteria was much higher when there was at least 3 women on the executive board of the company. So why do we speak about gender diversity? Not because of ethics, but because now it was accepted that it is an issue of financial performance of the company and organizational performance of the company. Next slide, please. Let's see how is the situation in the world and generally in Russia. today's situation with the women, it's a result of how the society developed and also what role women got in this society. If we speak, for example, about Europe, we can see that during all last century, there was a huge struggle about women's rights. For example, in France, women got right to vote only in 1945, so after the Second World War. And 5 times this law has been proposed, 5 times it was rejected by Senate. In 65, only in 1965, women got the right to have professional activity without husband authorization. Only in 67, women got the right to enter to the Paris Stock Exchange. Only in the years 70, they had the right to enter to the most prestigious engineering schools, such as École Polytechnique. In Russia, the situation was a little bit different, because already in 1917, after the revolution, there was a declaration about the equality of rights, women and men, and therefore women immediately got the access to the work and to have professional activity and to the higher education. And I think this slide, next slide, yes, please. This slide is very interesting because in some way it shows the result of this historical development. This slide shows, this graph shows current proportion of women in the senior management of the companies. And what we can see, that generally worldwide, this percentage proportion is 25%. So in 25% of managers, high managers, are women. In North America, it is 23%. In European Union, it is 26%. And in Russia, this proportion is 47%. It is the first in this criteria. Russia has the first position in the world currently. And I would like to say that in many questions today, Russian, during different forums, they invite experts coming from different countries to show, to share benchmarks, and in order after to get this international experience to bring it to Russia. And I think that if we speak about gender diversity, it can be the opposite. I think that in this case, Russia could be considered as a real benchmark in the world. Now I would like to speak about my personal case within Renault Group. So first about generally Renault. Renault-Nissan Alliance, who last year, at least the results that was already published for the first semester of the year, became #1 in the world, was always preoccupied about the diversity issues, especially with the arrival, of course, of its president, Mr. Carlos Ghosn, and after the purchase of Nissan and creation of Renault-Nissan Alliance. So during the time when I was working in the company, so about 12 years, I personally saw 3 waves of diversity. The first wave was cross-cultural diversity, where Renault got a very ambitious target to develop its sales in the world and in the country other than Europe. So the decision was to recruit rather massively young foreign specialists, and the installation of English language became obligatory for all employees. Second way of diversity was cross-functional diversity. There were it was the initiative of the president, Mr. Carlos Ghosn, with the creation of a cross-functional team, so people coming from different departments with different careers, and the target was to use their complementary in their experience and their minds in order to solve complex issues of the companies and propose improvements. And the last wave was gender diversity. And I would like to pass to the next slide, please. What was behind this wave? Carlos Ghosn, CEO of Renault-Nissan Alliance, said, gender diversity has also been focus of my leadership. In 2004, I created a department called the Diversity Development Office, which reported directly to me. And this was not a social decision. It was a business one. About 65% of car purchase decisions all over the world are made by women. However, most decision makers and workers in the car industry are men. This discrepancy does not make sense from a competitive, sustainable standpoint. So nothing about ethics. It's a real business necessity. Next slide, please. So if I speak about my personal career in Renault, I started the activity in 2000 in Paris as a finance controller, and passed in 2004 to the bank of Renault Group, first as a project director of for Russia Future, and after became managing director of the company. For the time, it was a real revolution for Renault. Russia was the first company having a woman as a managing director. And I would say that Renault really supported me during all the career. First through internal, of course, very intensive internal trainings. When I was appointed, I had 5 months training inside the group, seeing different subsidiaries of the group, and also attracting business schools with dedicated courses. So special courses were prepared by EDEC Business School, ESSEC, and the Lyon Business School. And I think it's also was very important for the career support and career development. Next slide. So what was, in fact, my project? I arrived in Russia in 2005, and from start, had to create the company, recruit people, define the strategy of the company, create products, sales distribution, methods, etc. So in 2006, we launched in Russia Renault Credit, Nissan Finance, and Infinity Finance, first in 7 cities and then in 80 cities in Russia. In 2009, crisis arrived in Russia, and we had to find some solutions how to deal with people's fears about the future. And we were first in Russia to launch what is called unemployment credit insurance, so in order to protect people. Next slide. I will go very quickly. So very briefly, the results of this activity. During 5 years, the company financed 170,000 cars for 2 billion euros. And the activity was very profitable. Every 3rd Nissan cars that was sold in Russia, and then every 4th Renault cars sold in Russia was sold through Renault Credit RCI program. Next slide. And then we compared our activity with our colleagues, so other car captive banks. The portfolio of RCI Bank was 3 times higher than the average. And Next slides. And the very important point for us was the relations with our partners, so with our dealers. And we were very happy to see the results of Global Dealer Satisfaction Survey that appointed us Renault and Nissan as the first brands in terms of their satisfaction for financial services. Next. So what were the key success factors of this activity? I considered that the main success factors was the team. In my team, 37% of executive positions were women. What is interesting, I had two commercial directors, one for Renault Credit, that was woman, one for Nissan Finance, that was a man. So very interesting to see two different types of management, of men, very directive approach in management, and it was the force very creative. And for women, a lot of diplomacy, a lot of team inspiration, a lot of also important organizational and control skills. Both of them were very successful, and I think also what was important is their complementarity. I never organized the competition between them, but the key point was to work together to the common result. The main management values on the company was to have a clear KPIs, so clear goals defined for the company, clear strategy, always try to inspire the company to be the first on the market. Was very important, as I told, the team solidarity, transparency, and to recognize the success of every person who participated in this very hard work. I will here finish my presentation because this last question about what kind of support we can get from the business school, we will leave it for the dessert, and we will discuss it at the end of our session. So I thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah. Irina, thank you. And Irina touched really many interesting things in her presentation. And McKinsey really set up a strong business case for women being in a leadership position and success of the company. And after that, McKinsey made several other reports, which was called Women Matters. And the progress was very slow. And it's interesting that in 2014, the Global Gender Report of Global Economic Forum showed that it will take so many years to have a gender balance. How many years it will take? What do you think? 78. So in 2000, if the speed will be the same as at the moment, only in 2095 we will have a gender balance in the companies. And there are many reasons which prevent women of being on the top of the position. The higher the ladder, the fewer women we see on the managerial position. There are some objective reasons, like, double pressure from business and for the family, many roles. It's actually our world which interfere into our family and private life. We have to be 24/7 on, always on, answering emails, no border between private, vacation, weekends. I remember that in Sochi, our husband sent the invitation through Outlook from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. family time, and we were sitting and answering tentatively. And not many husbands can cope with this, obviously. And another thing really about the women character and also stereotypes, because men are more, doing PR. They are much more confident. They are very risk takers. If they are offered the job, and I saw so many cases being in a top management position. The male correspond 50% on the job, but he say, of course I can do it. Of course, I would like to grow. And women, 80% fit, say, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not so good enough, maybe there are better candidates, I will better wait to next year. So, and women are modest and more humility. They have more humility by nature and maybe by stereotypes, which the environment we were brought on. So we don't PR ourselves in business agenda. We can do the job, we can take the project. And another thing, it's also the role model. There are not so many role models which we can, learn from. And also, Irina mentioned in her presentation this privilege of working in the joint leadership teams where male and female bring different sort of leadership, different kind of leadership. It was interesting study of Google, which was called Aristotle, about team effectiveness, and they say that if there is a mixed team, they're much more productive than only female team. And I would gladly give the floor to Irina Kibina, which will talk about these soft things, which helps to be successful and which prevents to be successful.
Thank you, Marina. Dear all, the last time I spoke on gender issues was around 10 years ago. And I recall two questions with which I began my presentation. And whether you want or not, I will start with the same question. Last time, these questions pushed the audience into agreeing and into smiling. This time, I'm pretty sure you will just simply laugh at it. The question number one, can you right now imagine that there is a conference room with 10 people sitting at the table, 10 of them are men, one is a woman. The question, who will take the notes? 10 years ago, yes, now the most professional or a legal person will take the notes from my life experience. And the second question was exactly the same room. The meeting should start in 10-15 minutes and everyone is thinking about coffee. Who will call for coffee? Right now, I would say that the person who organizes the meeting will call the organizer of food and beverage. It might be either a girl or a boy or a woman or a man. And right now, I would say that with my witness for 10 years, the total situation changed really so much from my personal experience. So, where is the diversity, gender diversity in present-day business education? On my point of view, because I've got my EMBA in 1993, and it was just the issue of hard management skills improvement. These days, everyone, including this wonderful business school, is saying and considering the issue of soft management improvement. And as soon as the key idea of how to improve the soft management skills is more or less implemented, everyone will start searching for better ideas where business effectiveness, business productivity, and efficiency will come from. And it will be exactly the same story, like with main discoveries in science, where the brightest discoveries come from the borderline between the platforms of different sciences. And gender diversity, on my point of view, is one of the hottest issues which can bring quite a lot of business efficiency, productivity to business world. It will be the issue which will be widely taught in business schools, how from 1 to 1 get not 2 but 3. After an entrepreneur answer what and where business value should be created, how and why questions will be answered. It again might be about diversity. Hardware in this highly competitive world is around the same, more or less with software. So with hard management skills, soft management skills are more or less the same. What will bring the competitive success? It will be issues who will be the first, who will implement the advantages of gender diversity to business. Because really, I totally agree with Marina. Men are, on my point of view, from my life experience, if a threat or a problem comes, a woman typically tries to deal with the problem, to resolve a problem. And a man, in general, tries to resolve the threat which comes personally to a man. Because it might be a problem, or it might be a person who creates this problem. It's different issues. While a woman usually tries to get fully concentrated how to remove their issue, which can be very risky, or a problem which should be solved. You know, what I would say, I recall a wonderful business case where two different cultures created strongest outperforming in business results. It was the company where both Marina and I were lucky to work, was 10K BP, a big clash of two cultures, multinational culture of BP and all the way around, as it was thought at that time, Russian 10K. And you know what happened? Both 10K and BP, with 50-50 split in shareholder capital, brought all the best in their cultures. And the company, especially at the time when I was witnessing its success, was it was the most efficient oil company in the world from the point of view of return on capital invested. Gender issues also, from my life experience and my office experience, I have never been in a situation when I felt a kind of restrictions to my opportunities. And I would say that mostly I was successfully working in more male companies, because I was working for beer, for brewing company, I was working for steel and mining, for banking, for oil and gas, for nuclear industry. And all those industries, they demonstrated very strong male approach to doing business. And you know, I felt very comfortable in it. And also I feel very comfortable with a lot of very successful women who think business. As soon as you start thinking emotionally, you will lose. As soon as you come back to thinking business, you will definitely win. Women are definitely more risk alerts, and men are mostly risk takers. If you put at the same table, like we had in year 2001, in summer of year 2001, in Saransk brewery, we did an exercise trying to investigate all the potential risks which can come to brewing to a plant. And you know, there were some men and women sitting at the table. Finally, we come up with 109 risks. Men sitting at the table proposed something very bold, like poison, business continuity not been followed. Women were extremely creative. And you know what was in that list? Just I'm reminding, summer of year 2001. It was airplane crash. You know, at that moment, we thought it would be totally impossible. Intentional airplane crash. And you know, just in September of the same year, we understood how women were totally right with making full long list of potential threats. I came back to Russia after 2 years of working abroad. And I thought that what might be my continuation of my career. And you know, yesterday I've got support for my idea to get concentrated in mentoring and in assistance both to men and women, but to top managers and those who are so-called golden colors of the companies, how to achieve a higher level with themselves in being more confident and more professional, mostly in soft skills. And you know, yesterday, while preparing to this session, I have found that on March the 8th of year 2017, the survey results were published, the future tech workforce, breaking gender barriers. And you know what were places number 1 and number 2? 5 barriers experienced by women in tech were identified, and number one with 48% was lack of mentors and sponsors. Number two with 42%, lack of female role models in the field. And actually it made me feel extremely confident that I made right decision to come back. And within these 2 years I have been working in the Caucasus. And I was really impressed with one story of the 19th century. It was Gadjit Agiyev, a very famous and extremely, unbelievably successful oil man from Baku from the century 19. He, who was totally illiterate and he was not doing any kind of writing, he was read and he was said what to do, where to put a kind of a cross. He established the first in the Caucasus school for girls, because his very strong belief was, his saying, his citation, his quote was the following: if you provide education for a boy, you will get a professional man, an educated man. If you provide education for the girl, you will get an educated family. And what I would say right now in a business school, if you provide excellent business education and access to entrepreneurship for a man, you will get a very successful entrepreneur. And if you provide excellent business education and access to entrepreneurship to a woman, in a generation, you will get a country full of entrepreneurs. This is my strong belief.
Thank you, Irina, and some incredibly powerful words. We'll talk, I hope, in a while about the importance of mentoring and coaching in this challenging environment, but very helpful. And fantastic to hear these examples of organizations that have really embraced the power of diversity, and one of those is certainly the Coca-Cola Company. And our panelist, Katya Alexandrova, who's had incredible breadth of experiences, including driving Coca-Cola to the #1 position in the juice market here in Russia. So, Katya, thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for introduction. A few numbers from me. I'm happy to represent the company, which is a worldwide beverage leader and operates in more than 200 countries. What is more important, Coca-Cola Company worldwide employs more than 150,000 employees, and together with our bottling partners, so we have the total number of associates of 700,000. A couple of gender-related numbers, which can show you where we stand against the statistics which earlier were shared by Irina. Worldwide, in our company, and I'm speaking about 150,000 employees, which are directly employed in the Coca-Cola Company. So women represent 43% overall, and women in leadership are 33%. Are we happy with those results? Not necessarily. There are ambitious targets to bring it to the higher levels and to target equal participation of men and women. But what is important? If you take the numbers, so for Central and Eastern Europe business unit, which Russia is part of CE business unit, we have 65% overall representation of women and 50-50 representation of women and men in the leadership team. So I would say that this is an impressive result, and Russia mirrors those numbers. So in Russia, we also have the equal representation of men and women. But I also have to say that this was not always the case. When I joined the company back in 1996, there was frequent meetings where I was the only female being present at the table, because the company, of course, there are a lot of sales operation, there are a lot of production facilities, and at this point of time, their kind of representation of women was not there. Could you please move to the next slide? Let me share with you some of their examples and some of the successful business practices which we may share with other companies. And here it's important to note, as Tim said, I was representing Russia, Russian Coca-Cola operation in the Global Women Leadership Council. And this is one of the critical elements of the success if you want to build the gender diversity and if you want to keep this topic really living and if you want to progress. So Women Leadership Council was created more than 10 years ago, and the task of this body is to make sure that the best practices across the world are shared, that there is a structure in the processes, routines, and setting the certain targets across the globe. And there is a lot of activities which are being led by this Women Leadership Council. So the second key to success is that even if you have a dedicated body or group of people who are supervising the diversity agenda, it's absolutely critical that the top management of the company really and genuinely commits to driving gender diversity. In the case of the Coca-Cola Company, we are happy to say that this is definitely and one of the key priorities of the company worldwide. And not only is being shared by top leaders of the company, and not only a Coca-Cola Company is part of many international associations and non-for-profit organizations where the gender topic is being discussed and properly addressed, but also what we have is that we have institutionalized responsibility for driving gender diversity. There are KPIs which are being assigned to top leadership, and there is no single general manager of a country who can succeed if the gender diversity topic is not addressed in the country. The next point is that we discussed before is that for women especially, it's very important that women have a high level of self-awareness, but also have clarity on how they can develop, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and what are the routes to advance in their career and what can be their career opportunities. This is not gender specific actually, so that's why in most of the big companies there are certain processes, routines and forums where the people development agenda is discussed and where there is complete clarity on the process how someone can understand strengths and weaknesses of him or herself, and what are the necessary experiences someone needs to obtain in his career to move to the next position. This is very important, because sometimes for a person to become a senior manager, he or she needs to get certain formal training, needs to get certain experiences, potentially move to another position, potentially move to another country. And of course, the person needs to be followed on the route, needs to be coached, and needs to be supported by his management. The next point is that not long ago, but a few companies, including Coca-Cola, started to think about very targeted and very specific educational programs, which are taking into account the differences in the way how women are approaching their career development and how women think and where they need their support. I can give you an example of two programs which exist in our company. One is targeted at the newcomers, and it's called Achieving Your Best Self. This is mainly focuses on increasing the self-awareness of a person about her strong and weak areas and where she needs to develop and where she needs to focus her next steps. This is one program, as I mentioned, at the starting level. But we also have a dedicated program for middle management for those women who are thinking about becoming the senior executives, and this is called Women in Leadership. This is generally helps women to understand, once again, what are their critical experiences and capabilities they need to develop, and they help them to make sure that they understand what are their leadership style and where they're going to be successful. The next point, this is exactly to the point which Irina has covered before. For women especially, it's absolutely critical to maintain the network and to understand, to see the proper role models, and to be mentored through the course of development. In our specific case, we have an international platform which is called Women's Link. So this is a kind of opportunity for people to hear the best practices, the news from other countries, but also to connect to other successful women and to ask very simple questions. So sometimes it's about understanding how another woman have made a choice, how she has informed her next steps by understanding better her personal strengths and weaknesses. So mentoring definitely is critical part here, and I would say that any senior leader in the Coca-Cola company has a responsibility to become a mentor for more junior colleagues. I'm frequently helping some of our other women in our organization because, as noted, it's absolutely critical they understand how we have made the choices in our life and what are the specific kind of recipes which we may share and how they can learn from us. Last but not least, of course, all those systems, all the commitments and processes can hardly work if, for whatever reason, the work environment is not friendly for people, and especially if it's not friendly for women. And here I can share a few examples. In Russia, we have different forms of so-called flexible work arrangements. What it means. For example, once in a week, someone can select a day to work from home. And there is a certain flexibility of working hours. It's especially critical for women who have just got kids and who has the family to manage. For example, if you have to take your kids to the school, their arrangement allows you to come to work not at 9, but at 10 or 11 if you agreed with your manager. So this is one element. There were some other interesting examples in other countries. For example, I've heard from India that they have arranged a so-called concierge service in their office. So this is one point of interaction where a woman can come to make sure that her family-related issues are taken care of. Arranging the tickets, sending clothes to cleaning, arranging buying food, and many other things. So like a company invests money which are not necessarily significant in order to support a woman and to make sure that she can really focus at work and not being distorted by some family issues. So from my side, the only thing which I wanted to say in addition to this is that there are a lot of good practices. Are we as a company 100% satisfied where we are? Not yet. There are many initiatives still which we believe we need to put in place. But the critical element is that you need to be consistent in what you do to drive gender agenda. If you set the processes, if you set the certain targets, you need to secure continuity for years, and this is not a one-off project which you can launch and then drop. So this requires time, this requires commitment from the top management, and of course, this requires commitment from all the leadership. Yeah. Thank you.
Super.
Yeah, thank you, Katya. Indeed, many companies recognize the issue and do something about it, but this is a wonderful example of a very systematic approach when gender diversity is a strategic priority for the company, when there is a measurement on each management layer and there is numbers so you understand what to do and what is the situation. You have management commitment, you have development program, you have HR practices and support of women and male. And my personal story is that my third child was delivered 2 months before opening ceremony, and my husband go to their HR and say, I need to take paternity leave because, you know, my wife is crazy, she would like to manage Olympics. And she was allowed to work distantly from Sochi, supporting me in raising our 2 months baby. But again, it's really important that many companies think about it And they have good practices, for example, kindergarten, or support women after maternity leave, though I personally think that after maternity leave, women can coach how to be multitasking and effective. Yeah, but there are, development program, networking program. And for the first time in Russia, on the 10th of November, 2017, there was a big forum which was called Women Matters. And this forum, there were more than 50 companies participants who shared their best practice, and it was a great success. And this forum will be repeated in a year. And here is Anna, who is the leader of this forum. So it's a great initiative to really start the awareness program and share best practice and stimulate companies to do something and to share this best practice.
Yeah, fantastic insights. And I think it's appropriate since we are at RANEPA and we've heard incredibly powerful insights from the corporate sector. And I loved, Katya, your reference that at Coke, any country level KPIs must include specific metrics tied to gender diversity and impact. I think that says a lot. But it's clear that business schools have a role in this, in the academic and professional development training in this arena, and probably no one better to begin these insights in this discussion than our colleague Danica. So, Danica, if you don't mind.
Hardly waiting, to have my turn. I'm so long already walking in this world around that I really have a lot of experience concerning this too. Although I'm not a specialist on this issue, but I'm working for the equality of gender and for gender equality, and I shall give you some of my, and also out of my own life story, I shall give you some examples. I'm lucky to come from Slovenia, which have the highest percentage in European Union on women in leadership in politics. They are more than 40%. But why? Because some years ago we got a new, young, clever prime minister, and he arranged that we have quotas in politics. So we have half of our government are women. And it's nice to see that. They are really, and I think they are better, I'm sorry, but they are really very, because you have always to be better if you are a woman, to come somewhere. That's the fact, still. So this is one. In business is less good, although we are still having the highest number in top management, which, in boards, etc., we have like more than 15, something around 15%, which is really the high management. And there, as a president of management school, I am really fighting strongly to get quotas. Because once I invited a lady from Norway who explained to all our people that in Norway they have quotas and they have 44% of board members women after they have quotas. So I have to tell you how it works. I went to firstly I was already like 4 or 5 years ago suggesting this to Management Association of Slovenia to work for quotas and to support the Minister of Labor who should then propose this. And it looked like they accepted that, and so I didn't, I was waiting when I shall see that, but then it stopped this procedure. I was invited to the same Japanese forum last year to talk there about, as a representative of European Union, to talk about women in European Union. And then I started to think there, do we have finally quotas or not? So when I came back to Slovenia, I checked and they said, no, we stopped all these activities because this part of the, the men's part in the board of management organization was not for that. So then I went to the minister. Firstly, I was attacking these ladies there. why didn't they proceed? Then they were sorry for that, of course, and they asked me to go with them to the minister, a lady, Minister of Labor. And she said, please help me. I really need the help. Then she said, go and convince the minister, a man, of Economic Affairs, because he is against. So I went to the Minister of Economic Affairs, and I asked him. And after 1 hour and a half, I went home with his explanation that he is divorced and he is very disappointed about his former wife, and that's why he is against quotas. I'm very sorry now, but it's true. I'm very sorry, you know. So then of course, they said to me, do you have to convince the Prime Minister, etc., etc., etc. So I'm now the one who is between the ministers going, you know, because they don't talk so much, they are from different parties, and I am trying to convince them. Since we shall have elections, I don't know, April or May, I have doubts whether I shall succeed. But with this government, but I am working on like I shall. This is one, you know, how important it is to have quotas, because, you know, in Holland they have quotas too, in Netherlands. But what happens there, like 11 women have each of them 10 board memberships. So what is very true is, what somebody of you said already, women are not supporting other women. This is the fact, unfortunately. And so then they start to give a bad example. They say, look, in Netherlands they have quotas too, but they didn't, they are only some women doing that. So again, we should not let us discourage. What I wanted to say too, that in that association of managers, we have mentoring and coaching of young women. And that's really very important. I shall not work further on that, talk further on that, because I agree with you. Then I want to say that East and Central Europe is really much further than others are. And that's why we all the time, like in socialism, we were saying, you know, everybody equal, a lot of kindergartens and all that. That's why we don't have these subjects in the school, you know, and we don't have in management school. But now a Swiss company came to me and asked me to make a seminar on gender issues, and I can, and then of course I needed some support, and I got from United States the typical seminar which they have, and I shall tell you what are the subjects, and I'm now working with this global pharmaceutical company, you know, on the seminar that we shall make for them, and then probably more of this will come. And it's like that. When it's only for women, then you have to have general introduction to status of women in work, barriers and opportunities, systemic marginalization. I'm reading what Americans have. Contemporary ethical new gender, this I don't know to read. Leadership theory that can be seen as transformative, transformational leadership, inclusive leadership. Building confidence, then comes the skills, you know, personal and career development, identity clarification and leadership identity formation, navigating gender barriers, delegating effectively, this is a leadership skill, networking and selling yourself without selling out. That's a title, you know, and I agree. Again, you heard here, and I shall not work on that, but for further talk on that, networking is absolutely important, and you don't see it with women. And risk-taking, you don't see it enough, I mean. I'm a good networker, good example. You know, networking, I shall give you an example. A company that is dealing with headhunting told me, a president of the company told me, that they need to call 9 times a woman to apply for the place and only 2 times a man, because they think I'm not good enough, I don't have connections, I don't have that. So you see, that is true what one of you said already. So then another course, you know, another course, we had discussions with some of the ladies who are dealing with that. They said it wouldn't be bad to have a course for men and women, because it depends everything on the mindset of both. whether we shall succeed or not. So in such a course where would be men and women together, we can, how can men share, one of the titles of the seminars is how can men share their privilege with women. Second one is structural and policy barriers in workplace. Then it's systemic nature of gender issues, mentorships and partnerships. So this is, you know, we have to create also an awareness with men. What is the situation with women? Because they don't realize enough too. It's not that they just are against, but it's often, I think they are not realizing and women are not fighting enough. And so I would like to tell you some positive things at the end. One is that whenever, you know, Siemens is an association of and I'm president of it, of 225 business schools from 55 countries. We started in Eastern Central Europe, and what happened was that we could dance at our annual meetings, and we still dance because we have enough women deans. There are two sitting there. You know, enough women deans. And whenever I try to attract attention around the world and inviting Western European deans to become members of our association, I say, come, we shall dance. And then, you know, they listen to this. So whenever we have a gala dinner at the end, and we always have, we are dancing. And just by the way, I tell you that last September, I organized for the first time conference in China, and their biggest problem was we can't organize a dance because it's not a tradition to dance such a dance is like you do, waltz and, you know, and all kind of other things. And then I said, okay, and then I brought from Slovenia, you know, the music with me and the girl who would make it, you know, and we would then dance on this artificial way. So we were all ready. But then this Chinese really surprised us. Do you know what they did? The course for dancing, all teachers of that Zhejiang University were learning to dance so that we really had a real dance. But mostly with our women there, of course. Then from Eastern Central Europe still. And then, what did I want to say? And I organized 2 conferences on women leadership, one in Slovenia some 3 years ago, and then I invited some African ladies, and they were so enthusiastic that I made last November the conference in South Africa for all African continent on women leadership. We shall publish a book about that. If you are interested in, I have the other book too, of the conference on women leadership in Europe. And this was sponsored, my dear madam, from Coca-Cola. This was sponsored by Coca-Cola Chair for Sustainable Development, because in our school we have Coca-Cola Chair, and I said, because Coca-Cola has women, water, and well-being, so I said women is very important, and we had this conference under their sponsorship, and it was absolutely a great success. And what can I do as a dean too, besides, you know, creating awareness? I'm every year giving scholarships to less developed parts of the world, mostly Africa, and I'm always giving it to women. And of course, I'm taking care that these are excellent candidates, because the quality is the most important. But fortunately, they have very many women who are really top class. So I'm also, when I have a candidate, man or woman, and they are both excellent, I give a priority to women. And I had the first Chinese ladies there, et cetera, from all over the world, I do that. So this is what I wanted to contribute, and I would make still one comment at the end.
Thank you, Danica.
Can I say still one comment?
Sure.
Excuse me, just one comment. You know, I use the same arguments as you did from Renault, madam. You know, showing to people how important it is for business success to have different, you know, to have women there too, I mean too, equally represented. But I still believe that it is a right of women, not because of success, but it's a right of women to be there. So this success factor is important to convince men. But I still think that the main reason for that we are really equal and that we should be there, you know. So what if business and society would be successful without diversity? You know, I think that we really have to believe that you need two sides to be a leader, and that diversity is just a human right, whether it brings success or not. We should realize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danica. I think we're fortunate to have a second business dean here from one of the prestigious federal universities in country from Kazan. So, Alsu, I'll turn this over to you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank Team Marina for inviting me to be a part of this panel discussion. As a bit of background, please, the next slide. As a bit of background, before we get started, High School of Business of Kazan Federal University was founded in 2000 as a part of KFU, one of the oldest universities in Russia. The next. Today we will discuss gender inequality in Russia and the role I believe the business education plays in reducing it. Then we will turn to gender-related questions in my region, the Republic of Tatarstan, and what our business school does to answer them. The next, please. In Russia, the trend is toward increasing number of women in managerial positions. Since 2000, the number of female executives has more than doubled. But in general, men still predominate in managerial in top management, 62%. According to Russian Federal State Statistics Service data for 2016, the number of female executives was 2.1 million, and for male executives, 2.9 million. However, the average salary of female executive is 36% lower than her male peers. Income statistics for general population in Russia also show this gender inequality. At present, Russia is in 71st place in the Global Gender Gap Report. This position is primarily caused by the low ratio of births to death, which began decreasing in the 90s. In response to this, the state implemented social support to increase the birth rate, thus demotivating women to actively pursue their careers. The next slide, please. As you may know, the Quality of Life Index is based on 8 factors. The main factors that influence the gap between men and women's quality of life in Russia are employment and education. Business schools like ours address both employment and education, and thus have the potential, the opportunity, the privilege to help ensure gender balance and eliminate gender gaps. The next, please. In general, business education aims to effectively train female executives and involve women in economic activities by developing their business potential and integrating them into the business community, expanding their vision of business beyond known gender stereotypes, systematizing their knowledge, extending professional horizons, creating the basis for a serious career breakthrough. I feel that the business education plays an important role in advancing women's quality of life. At the moment, the share of women in MBA programs in Russia does not exceed 20%, so there is a significant growth potential there. The next, please. And now let me tell you about the situation in my region, the Republic of Tatarstan, and how our business school operates. We can think of it as a case study. One feature of our region is that 60% of our economy is accounted for industrial production, chemistry and petrochemistry, mining, mechanical engineering, aircraft building, production and distribution of electricity, gas and water, etc. Other important sectors are governance, construction, transport, and communication. All of these are high salary fields, and there is a prevalence of male workers in them. The next, please. Statistical analysis of women's share in the economic activity of the Republic of Tatarstan from 2000 to 2017 shows women predominate in retail, hotel and restaurants, finance, education, healthcare, and provision of social and personal services, accounting for 70 to 80% of workers. We are also seeing an increase in number of female workers in public administration. The next, please. And the next. Okay, thank you. Taking this into account, in recent years, our business school has been implementing both general and specialized MBA programs in a range of key economic sectors of the Republic of Tatarstan: oil extraction, healthcare, IT, and agribusiness. These programs are training more and more female managers from these sectors. The next, please. In the Republic of Tatarstan itself, the environment is relatively favorable toward gender diversity, and steps are being taken to promote women in business. For example, the region public organization Women of Tatarstan has been operating since 1996. It published an annual rating of successful women of Tatarstan. Many of them started their business from scratch and competing with male counterparts, achieved considerable results, success, and career growth in various sectors of economy. A second example is a fairly high level of economic activity of women in the Republic of Tatarstan. In recent years, there has been an increase in number of women employed in the economy. A third example is a growing proportion of women in government bodies of the Republic, as well as those holding positions in municipalities. We have many women with great parliamentary experience, and women have long been strong leaders in social issues. At the same time, this area also has potential for growth, because the share of women in the public administration sector does not exceed 20%. Another example is the Social and Political Association of Women Deputies, called Merhamet, Mercy, in our parliament. These women cooperate to reach common political goals, strengthening the role of women in the economy, politics, public life, supporting families and women in difficult living conditions, and supporting women with disabilities. In addition, there are numerous clubs of women leaders, and our school has representatives in many of them, which allows for the promotion of business education. In general, we should note the already high average level of women education in Tatarstan. It's only increasing, as well as the popularization of business education. Our business school plays a significant supporting role in these both changes. The next, please. On a personal level, as a female dean and as a professor of sustainable development, I welcome and encourage women's desire to study in MBA programs. Under my leadership, the school does the same. Over the past 5 years, it has seen an increase in female student enrollment. Our students, both male and females, are required to discuss international case studies and study best practices from around the world. Naturally, this includes dealing with gender inequality and taking steps to eliminating it. At the same time, our business schools is learning to apply internationally successful experiences in Tatarstan in a regional appropriate way. This is one reason we hold memberships in international association, and our international accreditation affirms that we make positive strides. The next slide, please. The need to increase gender diversity prompts us to action. But what action? Our business school and I personally suggest and work toward the following: promoting higher business education among women, expanding the range of business programs offered that aimed at ensuring career growth for women, and in general, studying what other countries are doing well, encouraging lifelong and accessible learning for all. This will not only help solve the existing gender gap problems in Russia, but also meet an important social and economic challenge, enhancing women's quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alsu and Danica. And we have seen the example of business school programs and approach to the women who are in the leadership positions or in business. But there is quite a large flow of young ladies who will take the leadership positions in the future. So are there a space for business school to prepare this absolutely different generation, much more active, much more inclusive, who are looking for the sense of purpose in their business to be really leaders in their life? And this question is addressed to Ekaterina Shulman, who joined our panel later. Katya is a famous politologist and has a PhD in law and in politics, and also is a professor of foreign Higgs. So, Katya, can you? It's always challenging to be the last one, and we promise some space for the questions. So, if you can be very effective in your time, that will be highly appreciated.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this gathering. I'm indeed the last to speak, and I rather feel like that evil fairy who was the last to be invited to the princess christening, because I'm going to start throwing some drops of cold water over everything. I am indeed a political scientist, so I do not represent a business school, I represent a science. And from the point of view of political science, my question is there a correlation between female participation in the government, in parliaments, in political life in general, and between the level of development of democracy and the general level of development of society? The question is more difficult, more complex than it looks. Do you know what is the country in the world with the highest percentage of women in parliament? Exactly, Rwanda. Country number one is Rwanda. More than a half of Rwanda parliamentary members are women. If we look at the list of countries with the highest female representation in parliaments, now we are talking about parliaments, it will be a very diverse list. It sounds like that. Rwanda, a winner. Number one. Sweden, Cuba, Philippines, Netherlands, Argentina, Denmark, and Angola. These are the first 8 countries. If we look at the political management in general, at the higher tiers of administration, we see that there are 3 factors affecting female presence there. And sadly, none of them is the level of development or the level of democracy. These are socialist past. Socialist countries were the first to allow women full voting rights, both passive and active voting rights, and the first to, for example, the first female minister was Alexandra Kollontai in Soviet Republic, and the first women occupying, maybe formally, but de jure, first positions were in Mongolia and in China. Factor number 2 is the recent past of genocide or war, which is the example of Rwanda and to a certain extent of Angola. Countries who have societies who have survived conflicts are more prone to have higher female representation. And factor number 3 has been mentioned here. It's gender quotas. It is also called by a less appealing name, positive discrimination. 111 countries in the world today have adopted gender quotas. Some of them have adopted them as voluntary offering of political parties who reserve certain number of places for women. Some of them have legislative requirements, mostly also for the parties competing for parliament, that they have a certain percentage of places that only women have occupied. And 29 countries in the world have specific places in the parliament and in the administration that only women can occupy, no matter what their party line or party participation is. If we look at the general list of countries where women stay in a high managerial position, again, I'm not talking about business, I'm talking about public policy, I'm talking about administration and parliaments. We see that, yes, countries with socialist past generally are high on this level. Scandinavian countries are high on this list, and here we do have a certain correlation because these Scandinavian countries are also the richest and the most democratic and the most safe, and they have high marks on democracy index and freedom house index and ratings of this kind, the ratings of the quality of political regime and government services. So here, yes, here we do have correlation. Countries of Anglo-Saxon tradition, England, United States, are generally pretty low, and Islamic countries are the lowest. So we do not have this direct correlation between democracy and female participation. Do women constitute a separate, a collective political actor? Is there really, in practice, a specific female agenda which all women are supposed to support? As political actors and political parties have discovered, sometimes to their chagrin, women not only do not tend to vote for women, for female candidates, not always. They even are not deterred from voting for candidates who are supposed to be anti-feministic or have done something bad to women in their career. This tool in election fighting has not proved so effective as it was supposed to prove. And this is a thing well known to feminist theorists. For example, one of the founders of world feminist movement, Simone de Beauvoir, has written that sadly, a female, a wife of a factory owner will be with a factory owner and not with a female factory worker, and white woman will feel solidarity with white male and not with a black woman. So it is not a new thing, it is a well-known thing. Notwithstanding this, we have to admit that feminist movement in general has been a benefactor to mankind, bringing equal rights, bringing diversity, making world as we know it now. So how are these seeming contradictions to be understood by political science? To put it very shortly, I think the point would be, and it also has been mentioned in various speeches which I have heard here, we can't say that female politicians or female parliamentary members have any specific qualities that make them better than male parliamentary members or male politicians. I have heard here sentences like males are risk takers and females are more prone to resolve conflicts peacefully. This is what is called in science anecdotal evidence. That is examples from real life, but it is not actually supported by any very tangible scientific evidence. We rather see that female women leaders, women top managers look more like men top managers than like women on the lower tiers of social hierarchy. But why is diversity a good thing? Diversity is a good thing, again, not because male are better than female or the other way around, but because it's bad to have a certain strata of society which is discriminated against. That's why women's suffrage movement was one of the benefactors of mankind. Not because women vote in some more progressive or democratic or even humane way, but because it's bad for the society in general when some of its members are not granted equal opportunities. I'm not a fan of gender quotas myself. But I'm a very great fan of equal rights and equal opportunities, which is not exactly one and the same thing. So I do not think that we need to ascribe specific virtues to women, especially not to women political leaders, because again, political leaders have qualities common to political leaders, not common to women per se. This world of diversity, this new society of equal opportunities, will resolve a lot of problems among those that have been mentioned here in a way that we can't quite grasp at the given moment. There have been talk here about how to make working places more comfortable for women. But maybe these double pressure issues, which is known to be a deterrent for female success on the workplace, will be resolved by the changing nature of the workplace. As more and more people work from distance, work from home, as the old office culture model is maybe fading into the past, this will give more opportunities to women who are more used to multitasking than male workers. And this may be to their advantage in the future of these shifting workplaces and shifting nature of the workplace itself. Another very interesting development that political science is watching with great attention and which will affect lives of women and women participation in politics is guaranteed basic income, the so-called citizen income. We know that this is already a reality in some places of the developed world. Certain municipalities are adopting the basic income system. Finland is conducting a large-scale experiment in just giving each citizen a certain fixed sum every month, no obligations, no strings attached, in place of the current system of social security and social support. If this institute will develop further, if more and more countries, of course first the rich and the developed countries of Northern Hemisphere will adopt this, it will affect women's lives tremendously. It will affect the nature of the family, it will affect the nature of employment, it will break the evil dichotomy, the choice that women are presented with right now, whether you have to choose a family and children or workplace success. So with basic citizen income, the choice will be different. The choice will be whether you choose to develop yourself, whether you choose to work at all, or whether you choose to be a housewife and a mother. This will be a very interesting choice because, again, we tend to have illusions about what women really want, and we tend to have illusions about whom women really support. The results of this Earth-large experiment, if this experiment will really take place, may surprise us. But still, these are the lines of progress, these are the lines of the development that we need to watch and which the political science is watching with curiosity and attention.
Fantastic insights. Thank you. We have, unfortunately, just a few minutes for your comments, your observations, if you would, please, questions? Please, and if we'll have a microphone, and if you would please introduce yourself.
You know, I didn't actually, I doubted whether I needed to ask a question. When the president, a female president of Harvard was asked, Madam President of Howard, and she said, I'm not Madam, I'm just President of Harvard. So are we talking about management style when we talk about gender equality, or are we talking about formal indicators like quotas and stuff like that? Like 47 managers in Russia are women. So is it more about effectiveness or about quotas? Stanford, 2 years ago, tried to introduce a program for leadership for gays and lesbians. We don't know what was the result of that program. So my second question, well, you know, there's the Tim Cook's phenomenon. He's right now head of the biggest company in the world. So does the LGBT factor somehow taken into account in leadership programs? As for Irina's statement, we might remember Indira Gandhi and Margaret Thatcher, who used to be like unique, unprecedented leaders. We now know there are female presidents in Brazil, in Asia, and elsewhere. But the situation in business is different. There's the glass cliff phenomenon. And her leadership positions depends on the diversity factor in the board. And the hypothesis of the savior as a concept for a woman has not been confirmed. No, studies show that it's not so, and there is no actual financial difference in the management style for men and women. You know, and you can only see these differences in the third year of the company's operations. So what was the question actually, and who did you address it to? I guess anyone. Okay, perhaps the final question was addressed to me. I don't think that there's any difference in the political leadership style in men and women. We all remember that the 18th and 19th century was the golden era for empresses, and Russian or British queens or empresses have not been saviors, have not supported the humanitarian agenda. So top managers, female top managers look more like male top managers and not their female subordinates. So we all know this story of Myanmar, and Nobel Prize winner, the female Nobel Prize winner, was the mastermind of an ethnic genocide. So once you have a woman in place, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have peace around the world or in a particular country. But overall, diversity is much better than one sex country or one sex party. And it doesn't mean that this particular demographic strata is bad. It means that when you have a monopoly, you have suppression of one class over another, or one strata over another. If you have a privileged strata, you have a suppressed other strata. It gives you a higher level of violence, tension, and that's a barrier for development. It's not about female virtues, lack of discrimination. This is the driver for development. Now, take Russia. So an average citizen of Russia is a woman of 39 years. We're an aging society. We have a big gap in in life expectancy between men and women. Women live longer. So the longer the strata you have, the bigger possibilities that you will have women there. So if you take a look at our top-down hierarchy power system, you would have a 60-plus male monopoly. And it's not just about age and sex group, gender group. The vast majority of that 60-plus bracket, these are people from security services or defense sector or law enforcement. So they usually are at the helm of those agencies and ministries. So I don't mean that these are bad people with bad values. No, I don't say that they are unfit. It's just that there's a big gap and divide. And there is a big divide between the needs of the ruling class and the needs of the class that's being ruled. And we very much hope that this divide will be bridged. Otherwise, it creates a political tension, which is bad and potentially explosive situation.
Please, if you'll introduce yourself to.
Ибрагимов Олег Михайлович, президент.
Oleg Ibragimov, head of a charitable foundation. I have 2 comments and 1 question at the end. Now, based on my experience, in the good old Soviet days, as a young man, I was asked to run a team, and I had 9 male vice chairmen. And so I hired 3 women to replace 3 men. And the situation became much better. You know, people started to talk without obscenities, and men started to look nicer. But, you know, those 3 women behaved in a way that led to a conflict between men and women. And I managed to put out any flames. So I think it all means that you need to have the right soft skills to be able to run a multi-gender society. And there was another story, you know, when another group of people told me, don't give us boys, give us only girls, because only girls can cope with that difficult situation. And we also worked at another company when I, you know, convinced the person that it was not just about gender, it's about qualifications. And again, what are do we have any evidence from studies? Well, perhaps we've created such a difficult life for women and you have to survive, I don't know. But so 37% at Renor. But perhaps these are the ideal proportion. Do we have any study that says, well, you have to have 50 and 50? But can there be a situation that there might that there will be 50 and 50 and it will not be ideal? And perhaps there will be a situation where there will be like only 30% male, so there will be counter-discrimination. So do we have any studies that have identified what is the right proportion? Certainly we all love women, we give you gifts, we allow you to run but not control. I'm not sure I'll be able to reply to your question, but here's what I can say. So when you have a conflict, misunderstanding, the first solution is that he behaves like a man, she behaves like a bitch. If there's a conflict, and when you have, again, a woman, that, again, women are perceived to behave like a bitch, and men are perceived to behave like a hero. So you always try to become personal. You know, I'll reply in Russian. So you always try to, you know, to look at the gender. Then if there are an all-female conflict, you try to look at whether you're blonde or brunette, so only the color of the hair. Then whether you're Gemini or Sagittarius or whatever. Or you might have a situation where people who were born on Monday would fight against people who were born on Wednesday. So I think the right proportion depends on the culture, on the country. If you take business, it only depends on the person who gives the best performance. I was the first president at Yevraz, the first female. And certainly men had a hard time at trying to hide their obscenities that they were about to utter. But it's all, disappeared in a month. They learned how to control their language. I mean, we could have, criticize other people by the height or, other characteristics, but it doesn't really matter.
Go ahead. Okay.
Let women ask a question. Tatiana Kiseleva, Publishing House, Standard and Quality for Business Excellence. I have a question for Denitsa Burk, and I will also pick up on what Maria Pachinok said. Now, on 16th of January, Danica said that they did a study on 10 main competencies of a future business school graduate. I think it applies both to men and women, but I would like you to list those competencies.
They're coming. While Danica is looking for those, let me commend to all of you. We've referenced a McKinsey study. It's called Women Matter, Time to Accelerate 10 Years of Insight into Gender Diversity. An extraordinary study with very specific recommendations for structuring organizations. Excellent, excellent research. Danica?
So these 10 competencies for the needed by 2020 for business to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution by the Seaman Research is complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility.
Excellent.
And then it's added strategically to think strategically and in a visionary manner, besides
Excellent.
all this.
A great question and a perfect answer. Would you please help me thank the panel today? And before we break, Marina was kind to share with me a story, and I'd like to, 30 seconds, tell you the scenario as you leave the room. A father and son were in a terrible car accident. They were taken by ambulance to different hospitals. The surgeon sees the son and says, "I can't operate on this young man. This is my son." How could this be? The surgeon, of course, is the mother. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, panel.